Welcome back, 622. It's time to take a look at your money. As we discussed last Monday here on Your Money, Iran's shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz has sent global crude oil prices soaring. Since the U.S. and Israel launched a joint military campaign against Iran on February 28th, the price of crude oil has risen over 50%.
And with millions of Americans currently on spring break, how has the rise in crude oil impacted the cost of airfares? And with the U.S. summer travel season just a few months away, should Americans expect to pay a lot more for their airfare tickets?
Financial advisor Mark Gravicheski joins us live this morning to break it down for us. Good morning, Mark.
Morning to both of you. Happy Monday. Great to see you again, as always.
Great to see you too.
Big topic here. To what extent has this spike in crude oil prices impacted the cost of air travel?
Well, remember, crude oil is ultimately refined into a number of energy products. Think of gasoline and diesel fuel, jet fuel, kerosene, heating oil, and many, many other products. Since the start of this conflict, back on February 28th, the price for a barrel of crude oil has risen 50%. The price for a gallon of regular gas that we put in our cars, that's gone up 33%. Diesel fuel up 37%. But the price for a gallon of jet fuel, which is used by commercial airlines all around the world, that's gone up 121%. The average price for the lowest available airfare now, kind of around $465. That's up 14% from January 1st. But with the price of jet fuel now higher by 121%, a 14% increase in the price of airline tickets, isn't really that bad. However, experts do warn that the longer that jet fuel prices remain elevated, the greater the chance the price of airline tickets continue to rise.
Yeah, so in terms of all of those different types of fuel, why has the price of jet fuel risen so much higher than the other types, like the gas we put in our cars?
Yeah, a great question, Emma. Absolutely, that just a great question. Look, not all crude oil is identical. We often kind of look at a barrel of crude oil and think that it's all the same. Some crude oil, is heavier and thicker, while others are much more lighter, with many, many variants in between. Jet fuel is produced from that heavier type of crude oil that's found predominantly in the Middle East region. In fact, about 45% of the world's total crude oil that can be refined into jet fuel comes from Middle East oil fields. And obviously, with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down, that critical flow of crude oil from the Middle East has come to a grinding halt. But also, look, jet fuel, because of safety standards, has much, much stricter specifications. So when there is a supply shortage, and we're certainly seeing that right now, it's hard to find different variations of crude oil that can be used as a substitute.
And what is the latest on the state of the Strait of Hormuz? And is there any timeline for when it might reopen?
Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz, and really, Devin, for Iran in general, remains kind of a very fluid situation. Uh, there's been reports of ongoing negotiations for a potential ceasefire. It seems like Pakistan is kind of trying to act as a mediator between the U.S., Israel, and Iran on the other side. But look, one of the new challenges that we're kind of seeing is that because Iran's leadership has been so decimated, it's who does the U.S. and Israel actually negotiate with to discuss any potential terms of a ceasefire? So, unfortunately, as of right now, it really kind of remains a little bit of a waiting game.
All right, something to keep an eye on, how it affects the everyday person, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark, for being with us, and we'll see you next Monday.